The previous basket is under review.
Welcome in to another episode of Weekend Under Review. That is Matthew Winick. I am Brian Rauf, here to break down the biggest games that happened the past week. Look ahead to what's coming up this weekend, which, going through the list, there is a lot this weekend. I know Saturday is Conference Championship Saturday for college football. The college basketball slate might be better. We'll get to that in a little bit. We'll get to recapping the last week, which included the ACC SEC Challenge. But first, we got to let you know that you need to subscribe to Basket Under Review. If you are not, $10 a month gets you access to all of our paywalled content on the website, basketunderreview.com, and get you access to the Discord, which features Shirley Donovan's insights and intel and just the community of college basketball fans that are in that Discord. It's a really tight-knit group of, as I affectionately say, college basketball sickos, which I think everybody in there takes as a badge of pride, a badge of honor, being called a college basketball sicko. Let's go ahead and dive into the ACC SEC Challenge. There's a lot to take away from the big games that happened this week. There are a lot of big games. I do want to start, though, with Duke's victory over Florida, because Duke seemed like they were in control of that. Florida took the lead very late and looked like they may pull out something there before Isaiah Evans hits the three to give Duke the win. So big picture, looking at the result in both of these teams, what did you take away from that game?
Duke went through long scoring drought stretches throughout this game. And that's crazy because the one question we kind of had going into this game was, is Cameron Boozer going to hold up against all that size and length down low? And like overwhelmingly he did. He was awesome in this game. He had 29 of their 67 points. And they went through long stretches in spite of him being basically consistently awesome throughout the contest. Nobody else stepped up. And that just can't happen. I mean, I guess it can happen because they did beat the national champions, so maybe they'll be fine. But offensively, like, you need somebody to be hitting shots, and Isaiah Evans didn't hit his first three until, of course, the game winner. Which, a great call by John Shire to be like, you know what? You've been off all game. They're going to send two to Cam Boozer on this screen, on this action. We're going to get Isaiah Evans, one of the best shooters in the country, a wide open look, and I don't care if he's 0 for 20. He's probably hitting that. So obviously that's a positive sign that you have faith in a guy who's struggling, but he was struggling in the first place. And that's the real problem. Like, we've been hyping up Caleb Foster for the last 2 weeks. Oh, maybe he's their third best player. Didn't do anything. Caden Boozer has continued to be invisible in big games. At least even he's not attempting anything. And just that number two option has yet to materialize. And it almost cost them here.
Yeah, I won't belabor that point against Duke because Duke did win, and like Duke's sitting here with a phenomenal resume through December 5th, right? Like, this Duke team is very good. But kind of to your point, I thought it was a great play by John Shire to draw that up and get that for Evans. You basically have your best player in Cam Boozer going off, and it's either him or your best shooter, Isaiah Evans. That was what it came down to. Any concern I have about Duke comes from the fact that it's Cam Boozer making that decision and not some point guard making that decision, which, could potentially be a factor or could not be a factor, right? Duke did it with Cooper Flagg last season. Sometimes it worked out. Sometimes late in games it didn't, because you didn't have a true point guard there. That's something just to monitor from that standpoint too. But Florida showed us why they are 5-3. And I think we got a little taste of what they potentially could be if Boogie Flan plays like he did the last 5 minutes of that game or so. And that's what Florida has been missing, right? The front court has been fine. They're one of the best rebounding teams in the country. It's like them and Michigan State, essentially. They're top 5 in offensive rebounding rate. Again, the perimeter has just been awful. 3-point shooting has been dreadful. The overall efficiency of guys like Boogie Flan and Xavier Lee has been dreadful. And so I have written in the Rauf report a topic about Florida's spacing and lack thereof, and how some of it's just going to come from by design when you have that many bigs. Florida's going to want the rebounding advantage instead of that. So they're basically fine with that. To offset it, they've relied on two wings, two guards who can create in Fland and Lee. Urban Clapshire coming off the bench too. Some of the other guys coming off the bench to do so. And the inefficiency of those guys has been dreadful. And it's why this hasn't worked. Boogie Flang doing what he did down the stretch, again, kind of taking over. I joked he was doing a Walter Clayton impression. if that happens consistently and Boogie Flan like takes a step forward and is the guy who we saw flashes of at Arkansas last season and can be what we thought he was going to be, I feel okay about Florida. But Florida had no business being in that game otherwise because the offense just doesn't have the spacing, doesn't have the pop on the perimeter to scare you.
Well, they have an All-American in Thomas Houck, and that's obviously going to help. And they're going to be in nearly any game that he's performing that well in. But like it's obviously early, but we're getting towards the point where you have to at least consider Xavier Lee being the biggest bust in the transfer portal era. Like it's bad. It's not just that the shot's not falling, because it's not falling. But we could have at least hypothesized that he was awful on catch and shoots last year. He's more of a dribble guard. That's one thing. But even the dribble scoring has been bad. He can't get to the rim. His floater is off. He's very thin, so defensively he's not a help. And he's a horrible fit next to Boogie Flan. Like everything that could go wrong is going wrong, and things can change. He probably hit some threes eventually, but it's getting late early on the Xavier Lee and the starting lineup situation, and obviously he's probably making 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times more than Urban Klopchar. They're probably going to have to make a change sooner rather than later. And we saw with UConn last year when they whiffed on Aiden Mahaney, who was supposed to be their starting point guard or at least starter on the floor, how detrimental whiffing big time on a likely starter is in the portal. Like, it's one thing if they're underperforming, it's another thing if you just can't play them. And we're getting a little bit close to that situation, which would obviously be a disaster for an elite front court.
Yeah, it was interesting down the stretch. Lee was not on the court when Florida came back. I wouldn't be surprised to see Todd Golden make some changes moving forward. Let's get to Kentucky and North Carolina, because Kentucky may need some changes after another loss from the Wildcats. North Carolina did not play great in that game, but anytime you go 10 and a half minutes without making a shot, as Kentucky did, you're probably going to lose, and that's exactly what happened. So from the Kentucky perspective, like what's next for them? Where do they go from here? Because panic mode is already kind of starting to set in Big Blue Nation.
Yeah, I guess you hope you get healthy. It sounds like Mo Diabate might be back in about a week or so with the high ankle sprain. Jalen Lowe, who knows? And Jaden Quaintance, I would be surprised if it's in 2025. At earliest, it's January. And without those three guys, there's not only no shooting, but there's no athletic pop on this roster. Those are Diabate and Quaintance by far their two most athletic players, outside of Otega Owe, who has just looked lost as a lead option after playing. I think we kind of took for granted just how awesome Kentucky's roster was last year. And although this roster is a higher paid roster, there's just so many holes. And Kevin Sweeney at Basket Under Review Sports Illustrated put it best. It's like, if you're going to punt on shooting, you got to have NBA athletes, and they have neither. And Mark Pope's system, which is a really intricate offensive system, just does not work if you don't have those things. And North Carolina doesn't have those things either, but they have two awesome front court players, and they had clearly the two best players in this game, and it wasn't close.
You think back to the best Kentucky games last year, or the best teams Mark Pope had at BYU. There was a lot of depth, and you would play guys a lot. Like, he would go into his bench a good deal. But you always had pillars, guys who, were still going to play 30, 32, 34 minutes a night because they were vital to your team. They were vital as leaders. They were vital from their shooting. They were vital from their defense. For something, they proved to be like a vital pillar to the rotation. Everybody worked around them. Maybe they are hurt, but this roster hasn't established who those vital pillars are for them. And so the end result is Kentucky keeps swirling through these guys. And I don't know if it's a matter of the people aren't getting chemistry together because they're not playing enough together, or if it's a problem because nobody has stepped up to be valuable enough to be a pillar where you have to stay on the court. But this Kentucky team doesn't have an identity. It doesn't have anybody who is leading them, who is saying, follow me, this is how it's done. We all assumed it would be Otega Owe because Otega Owe was that guy last year and became that guy last year, even with Mont Butler getting hurt and a lot of other guys getting hurt and people in and out of the lineup. Same kind of issues. Those things weren't there. I also think, Mari Williams, you brought up this point a number of times on the show, kind of his passing from the high post was a big deal for them. They don't have that kind of guy this year. Maybe Quaintance becomes that guy because he's got some playmaking ability from a passing standpoint, but Again, who knows when he's going to play and how effective he's going to be when he does play, right? So those are the two things with this Kentucky team and roster and makeup they need to figure out, because there's still plenty of time to turn this around. Again, it is November. You're going to SEC play. You're going to have plenty of opportunities. It's not like the sky is falling. But there are things that could make you think the sky is falling. There are some signs. If they aren't fixed, some of them can be figured out with injury, but some of it's just lighting a fire under some of these guys.
Yeah, no, it's hopefully the fire is you're going to lose your minutes once we get fully healthy. But kind of right now, you have to play through it. Like Brandon Garrison playing 9 minutes is kind of a bit of a sign. Like, don't step it up on the glass. You're not playing, but you gotta have to play him until Jane Quintans comes back. So Mark Pope needs to be able to threaten the minutes of these guys, like Chris Beard wants to do at Ole Miss. But Chris Beard is going to play like 15 guys, so you can do that. Kentucky has no choice at the moment. But Brandon Garrison and Jasper Johnson are in the doghouse, and they kind of deserve it right now.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought up the Chris Beard point. That was just the perfect dichotomy of AJ Storr and then a coach telling him to get his act together. The one other big game I want to make sure we touch on was Arkansas beating Louisville. Bud Walton Arena, we talked about being that atmosphere, and wouldn't be a shock to see that upset happen, and Arkansas does get the win. The fact Arkansas led by as many as 20 in this game may have been a little surprising, in the way they controlled this game may have been a little surprising. What allowed them to do that against a team that is as good, or we think is as good as Louisville is?
Simple. Louisville has taken 49% or more of their shots from three in every game this season. So at least basically half of every single game. So when you shoot half of your shots from three, they shot more than half in this one, and you shoot 21.5%, you will lose to good teams almost every time, because you're not doing much else if half your shots are three and they're not going in. They're not dominant on the glass. They lost the board battle. They were even in the turnover battle. They were pretty even in the paint, actually, 21 two-pointers to 22 two-pointers from Arkansas. But when you aren't hitting your threes as a team dependent on hitting threes, you are going to lose. It's almost like a coin flip where you're going to win 60% of the time, because Louisville is the better shooting team than almost any opponent they'll play.
Yeah.
But obviously you're going to have bad shooting games, especially when you're on the road in a loud environment against a really long team. Calipari teams are good at taking threes away. That they've always been. When that happens, they just kind of don't stand a chance. And so it's just, when you only have, and this is a Texas Tech problem so far this year, when you only have one real way of winning, if it doesn't go your way, you're going to lose. And so for Louisville, it's as simple as make shots or too bad.
That is the problem with Louisville. And you would hope that a team like Louisville or a coach like Pat Kelsey, that kind of program, wouldn't be just we're going to live by the three and die by the three, and that's it. They have to find a second way to beat teams, or a third way to beat teams if the three isn't falling. Because, again, as good at shooting as they are, they should be fine for the most part. But if you go cold in the first round against, I don't know, pick a directional school, South Dakota State, you go cold in the first round against that, how are you making your season go another day? Mm-hmm. And Louisville doesn't have an answer to that question right now. So we're gonna shoot ourselves out of it, which you can't always do, particularly when you play against good teams. I do think we saw too, they didn't have an answer for like the versatile big. Trevon Brazile had a huge game in this, and he needed a bounce back performance as well. But that's something to monitor for Louisville, is how they handle just that kind of guy. What else from the ACC SEC Challenge stuck out to you before we move on to the rest of the country here?
Yeah, no, it's a lot more of an even playing field than it was last year. Obviously, the ACC and the SEC. The SEC is a better conference, but the ACC is markedly improved. Virginia looked incredible last night. A little bit of that may have been Texas, but they looked incredible last night. Auburn's shot making when it's on is another world, and NC State's defense is like, what happened to Will Wade and all of the defensive acumen he's been able to build over the last couple of years, because that seems completely gone at the moment. And then Alabama being able to hold off Clemson down 3 of their 5-ish best players is kind of scary, considering Alabama's ceiling when their front court plays defense. Yeah,
100%. I'm glad you brought up NC State. I kind of dove into those problems in the Rauf report that's up on basketballreview.com. So Make sure you go check that out or subscribe and then check that out if you're not a Basket Under Review subscriber, into the defensive issues that State's having, partially in the context of they're not doing a ton differently from what Wade's teams at McNeese did, or even one of the back half of his tenure at LSU, what those teams did. It's the same kind of style, but they're failing in a couple key areas that's making the whole thing collapse. And so I dive into that in the Rauf report. That's, again, up on basketunderreview.com. But that's got to get figured out, or NC State's not going anywhere. Yeah. Not going anywhere, quite frankly. Miami continues to impress me a little bit. And I know Ole Miss had their own issues, and that led to Chris Beard's deal. But this is like the third or fourth time this season where they've looked incredibly competent, and they've looked like a team that, I don't know if top 25 caliber good is on the table for them at some point this year, but I'll be surprised if that team misses the tournament with the way that they've played.
Yeah, not enough people are talking about Ernest Udeh. He's such a good rim protector, and he impacts so much on the defensive end. Miami's 12th in the country in 2-point defense. It is extremely hard to score on the front court of Ernest Udeh and Malik Reneau when they're both on the floor together. And then they just have so many ball feeds in the front of that defense where they can be over-aggressive because they know they have great rim protection down low. And it's a great pairing of perimeter defense and rim protectors, where as long as the offense is semi-decent, they're going to win a lot of games.
Yeah, Malik Reneau has taken another step forward offensively as well. Like, he's looking like an all-ACC caliber guy.
It's almost like leaving the Mike Woodson scheme is a positive for a player.
We should go back and check the stats of all the guys who left Indiana last year and what their numbers are this year, because I think it would be a fair hypothesis to say that all of them are vastly improved or vastly more efficient.
Kanan Carlisle's been really good at FAU.
Who would have thought? Who would have thought? Who would have thought? Well, let's get to the rest of the country now, because there were other big games this week outside of the ACC SEC Challenge, the best of which happened at Allen Fieldhouse, where UConn went to Kansas, beat the Jayhawks on the road. The Huskies did not have Terrace Reed. Kansas, of course, did not have Darren Peterson, so it was, not full strength for either side, but UConn still gets the victory. Biggest takeaway in your mind from that performance from the Huskies?
UConn has mucked up every game they've played in so far this year, which is good. On one hand, it's great because, they're able to bring teams into their style, make them play on their battleground, and they've been victorious nearly every time when they've done that, outside of the Arizona game when they were readless and Braylon Mullins with lists at the time. The downside is because UConn kind of has to muck it up to win these games. They're not overly electric. They're not filled with great shot creation, and they're not, extremely athletic. They're physical, but they can't play in an up and down game. They can't really play, a high possession game. They have to muck it up, and Dan Hurley can do that as good as any coach in the country. But it kind of makes you wonder, like, what happens when a hot shooting team or a team that can dictate tempo comes in and plays the Huskies.
They feel more like the 2023 title team than the 2024 title team, because the 24 one was just offensively, I don't know what you would do with that team. The 23 team could put together really good spurts where they looked like that, but they won games with their defense and what I would consider a more traditional Big East style, right? With the toughness and grittiness and mucking it up to complement those stretches where the offense looked like it was on another level. I think this offense can get there, even perhaps more than that 23 title team did. They just haven't had their full complement of guys. Like, this is Braylon Mullins' second game, and I think he opened up a lot of doors for that offense with his shooting and his aggressiveness in this game. Like, I think it's fair to see a scenario where him, Solo Ball, Alex Caravan, Silas Demery, and Terrace Reed, all healthy, all with time playing together, become that Death Star kind of offense. But they haven't shown signs of doing that yet. So the fact that you're at this point in the season winning the games you're winning while shorthanded with that defense first style bodes incredibly well if they can get the offense figured out, which I think they will once they get some of these pieces back healthy and actually used to playing together. Yeah,
and to your point, when Braylon Mullins has been on the floor, he's taken 35% of UConn shots. So maybe he's the guy that unlocks the ceiling when he's playing a full allotment of minutes and probably eventually gets inserted into the starting lineup. It is interesting, though. He has taken, 17 shots, 0 assists so far. So maybe he'll want to get a little more acclimated to the playmaking aspect of the game too.
No, he's the shooter. They are not asking him to do anything other than put it up when he gets it. Where else do you want to go? Anything else catch your eye from around the country this week?
Yeah, we kind of covered a lot of what's been going on. I do want to say Minnesota down Chauncey Willis, down Robert Viola, hosting Indiana in the Big Ten opener and just like winning outright. Nico Medved, what a basketball coach, because there are very few coaches in the country that could have taken the six-man roster. Basically, they only played 5 guys, their starters, more than 8 minutes. And they went in and beat an Indiana team that was a darling in the non-con portion. So great coach. Not a very good basketball team, but great coach.
Great coach. I'm appalled I did not mention them. We got to talk about Syracuse's win over Tennessee in the ACC-SEC Challenge, 62-60 victory there for the Orange. Felt like the kind of potential inflection point in team season, because Syracuse played with a lot of effort. You got contributions from guys up and down that roster. It wasn't one guy carrying the load, although William Kyle blocked everything that was at the rim, and him individually winning that battle inside against Tennessee's bigs was interesting. Did that tell you more about Syracuse and what their upside can be, or did the loss tell you more about Tennessee?
It told me that Mick Cronin needs to keep big men, because Daimara and William Kyle were both backups at UCLA and now like stars at their new school. No, Syracuse, because Syracuse is so stout defensively at the rim, which is not like a variance thing. Like if you're a good rim defending team, it's kind of like Miami. Like you can either do it or you can't, and Syracuse definitely can. They've proven it against a really tough schedule. Like the ceiling is really high. They still can't shoot threes. They still can't shoot free throws. JJ Starling is still, a member of this team, and they're still winning. It's refreshing to see this Syracuse team defend, because everything else can kind of fall into place if they're doing that.
Yeah, 100%. I do want to shout out Iowa State as well before we talk about the week's games. They played Alcorn State. Nothing to be taken from a victory over Alcorn State, but they scored 132 points. Iowa State scored 132 points. Shot 22 of 30 from 3. Just knowing that your offense can get to that point, even against a team like Alcorn State, but knowing your offense can get to that point with the defense as good as Iowa State's is, just impressive. Just impressive.
15 of 19 from 3 for Milan Momcilovic and Jamarian Bateman.
It's pretty good.
Yeah.
Pretty good. You'll take that. You'll win most games when that happens. Let's look to the week ahead, because as we mentioned and I've been teasing, there's a lot of great games this weekend. If you haven't looked, that starts with Gonzaga against Kentucky. Wildcats trying to get back on track after that loss to North Carolina. Now face a Gonzaga team that is trying to make another statement after losing to Michigan, and I don't want to say anything glowing, but losing to Michigan in being dominated fashion. Can't find my words there. Who is this game more important for in your mind? Is it more important for Kentucky, or is this something Gonzaga's got to win to get back to being where they were before that Michigan game?
It's way more important for Kentucky. Gonzaga's good. I don't think that getting destroyed by Michigan should change anyone's opinion on that. Not to mention, and I have a whole thing on Basket Under Review right now about one of the points that I mentioned in my article this week of a non-conference roundup is the new 15 and 55 rule I've created, which is if you shoot under 15% or over 55% from 3 on 40% plus rate, throw that game into the trash. Doesn't matter. Gonzaga shot 14% from 3 against Michigan. Michigan almost at 50%. So just insane splits on that one. Obviously, Michigan wins that game 99 times out of 100 anyways. But the 40-point loss should have probably been more like 15, and now we're not having that same conversation. Gonzaga is a top 5 team in the country still for me. Kentucky is not, and they could really use Mo Diabate and Jane Quaintance in this game, who they will not have either of. So is there any fight in Brandon Garrison? Can Andrea Yelovich and Cam Williams be 4 men against Braden Huff? Probably not, but they're going to have to here in a neutral site very close to Kentucky game that will probably favor them but won't have those friendly home rims. They're going to need to shoot significantly better than the game against North Carolina, but that's not like a hot take.
Yeah. What does what's going to be the key battle in your mind? You brought up the ability with Huff. What's going to be the key battle, individual or just area that you think is going to decide it?
Yeah, it's the 4 spot. Who does Kentucky put at the 4? And can Cam Williams and Andre Yelovich make enough threes to get one of the Gonzaga bigs out and guard them? Because they're both below 30% on the year.
Yeah. I'm interested to see Kentucky's response because at some point there's got to be like a galvanizing player to bring everybody together and say like we're going to play hard. We've seen this happen before where teams get blown out and then come out playing incredibly hard the next game, particularly against a team as good as Gonzaga. I need to see some of that fight from Kentucky. Like there's not the mental fortitude, mental toughness of this team that seems like to get back up when they get knocked down, to use the boxing analogy there. I want to see some of that from this team. Even if they lose, it's probably better for them if they don't. But even if they lose, there's got to be some positive aspects you can take out of this because there was not any positives that come from the North Carolina game.
Nope. 0.
No. That game is Friday night. Saturday is going to get started with a pair of high-profile games at noon. The first one we're going to talk about is Iowa State, Purdue. That one should be a lot of fun. Purdue is still at number 1 in the country. Iowa State, we just mentioned, coming off of an offensive explosion against the Alcorn State defense. What are you expecting in this one?
I really, really hope Tamin Lipsey plays. I think my guess is he will. That's not an educated guess, but it seemed like the injury wasn't extremely severe. We haven't heard anything about a timeline. I'm hoping he's back because Tamin Lipsey, Braden Smith is as fun of a point guard matchup as you could get anywhere in the country. And they're so different too, and that's what makes it so great. Tamin Lipsey's obviously a better defender. Braden Smith's the best on-ball guard in the country. Iowa State's going to blow up ball screens, and that's probably it might be the best way to handle Purdue. We saw Alabama try both the drop coverage and the blowing up ball screens, and it was either Braden Smith or Trey Coffin-Renn that beat them with the pass, depending on what they did. Obviously, Iowa State's a lot better at executing blowing up ball screens than Alabama is, who doesn't traditionally do it. And TJ Otzelberger is an excellent defensive schemer, so he'll figure something out. You obviously don't expect Iowa State to shoot 70% from 3 again, but they do have a lot of shooting. And they have better complementary wings and guards than Purdue does. I think Killian Toure and Jamarian Bateman are better than some of the guys that Purdue is going to be trotting out outside of Lawyer and Smith. And so the question really comes down to, 1, can Blake Buchanan stay on the floor because the depth in the front court's really weak behind him? And 2, can Tamin Lipsey be on the floor and defend Braden Smith and run that defensive scheme that has, given teams fits for years under TJ Otzelberger? Because if so, I think Iowa State has a real chance here.
I do too. This game being in Mackey obviously makes things lean Purdue's way, but Tamin Lipsey hounding Braden Smith coming up the court, just a lot of fun for every college basketball fan to watch. I do want to ask, who number 1 in Ken Palm's National Player of the Year standings are or is?
It's definitely Cameron Boozer.
It's definitely Cameron Boozer. You know who's number 2?
Is it Josh Jefferson?
It is Joshua Jefferson.
Yes.
Braden Smith is down there at number 9, but he's ahead of Caleb Wilson, Jackson Landenborg, and Baron Philon. He has been incredible for Iowa State this season. And I bring that up because I think he in particular has a chance to throw a wrench into what Purdue wants to do, right? He is the guy who can take TKR away from the basket and make him do things on the perimeter, potentially exposing, the negatives from a foot speed perspective of having 2 bigs on the court, right? He's also strong enough to handle TKR or whoever else in the post on the other end. Typically, if Purdue is sacrificing one, it means they're gaining an advantage in the other area. That's not the case with Joshua Jefferson because Iowa State has the advantage on the wings, as you mentioned. Purdue has to win both the front court and the perimeter. Tamin Lipsey doesn't play or is limited. I think it's safe to say Purdue is going to win that battle. But the front court, I think, is an interesting spot where, as good as TKR is, Joshua Jefferson has been playing just as good, if not maybe a little bit better this season. Has not been tested the same kind of way, but certainly has been tested the way that Iowa State went through players there with St. John's, Creighton, and now a Syracuse team that maybe is better than we thought they were after they lost Iowa State by 30. Maybe that says something about Iowa State. I think he has the potential to be a real difference maker in this game, and it's going to have to be if Iowa State's going to go on the road and pull off the upset.
If Purdue wins this game, I think you're going to need 5 lawyer threes, at least, because his floor spacing is going to be the most important thing to get out of the Tim and Lipsy, Josh Jefferson defensive scheme in the middle.
Yeah, 100%. The other banger at noon on Saturday is Duke, Michigan State. Just a real fun matchup. Michigan State just continues to take care of business. Doesn't matter who they're playing. Just continue to take care of business. They beat Iowa.
They dismantled Iowa
earlier this week. They were up 20, like pretty early on in the second half.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was welcome to the Big Ten moment there for Iowa. But Michigan State's been doing that to just about everybody that they've played this season. Duke is the toughest test they will have faced, but Michigan State's also the toughest test that Duke will have faced. Two teams that are huge, two teams that like the rebound, two teams that are defense first at this point. So what's the advantage here? Who has the edge? It's just a matter that Duke has Cameron Boozer and Michigan State doesn't.
If you feel the earth slightly shake at around 12:15 p.m. Eastern on Saturday, it's probably because Cameron Boozer and Jackson Kohler are backing each other down in the post. Like, those are 2 of the 5 strongest players in the country. That's going to be a lot of fun. That's going to be what I'm looking toward. Is like the difference between Cameron Boozer and most of the bigs that Jackson Kohler would face, or Jackson Kohler himself, is that Boozer can back you down from the 3-point line. He can take 2 dribbles because he's a great ball handler, put his shoulder into you and move you, versus catch the ball in the post, 1-2, back down, post hook. I'm not sure if Kohler or Carson Cooper, if Tom Izzo goes that way, have the foot speed to manage that. And when you counteract the fact that Duke is actually the bigger, taller team on paper than Michigan State, has been physically dominant all game, then now it comes down to Michigan State will have to get Kurtang going, or Trey Fort going, or some outside shooting, because inside only is not enough to win this one.
It's not. Pat Ngongba's got to have a big game in this one. And I've caught plenty of flack from Duke fans, perhaps rightfully so, for saying in the preseason that the breakout for him was not coming. He has had a really good season. I don't think he's had the season that some were expecting in the preseason. That led to the comments of, I don't think he's going to be a lottery pick or things like that. But he has been really, really good for them this season and been an anchor on the interior for them around the rim. Like, you saw what he did against Florida. He had 11 points, 5 blocks, 5 rebounds, 5 assists as well, I think. Like, it was a really good performance against a really good front line. Duke needs him to do that and perhaps even more on the glass in this game, because that's how Michigan State wins games, is on the glass and on the interior. Cam Boozer is going to do Cam Boozer things, but if Ngongba can kind of take the pressure off of Boozer defensively and own the glass, that flips things in Duke's favor. 100% flips things in Duke's favor. Particularly, it would help if Isaiah Evans made some shots if they got more than they did last game from Caleb Foster or Caden Boozer. But that can flip things for Duke. Otherwise, to me, the game is just going to be a matter of who executes better in the half court. Quite frankly,
it is worth mentioning that Michigan State and Florida have identical offensive rebounding rates, and Florida grabbed 48% of their misses against Duke. So if that happens again, and this is now not at Duke but at Michigan State, now Duke's going to have a problem. They're going to have to shore up that defensive boards big time in this one.
Yeah, that's how Michigan State wins. Both sides want to get out in transition, but both sides are really good in defensive transition. Wouldn't expect a ton of opportunities there. Rebounding, we'll see what happens. It may come down to just half-court execution, in which case Duke has a better player. Michigan State's got the better point guard. See what happens there. Should be a fun game. Going to be a fun game a little bit later as well. Louisville's taking the court again. How important is this game for Louisville? Well, because Louisville was riding high after the Kentucky win, right? Haven't done a ton since then. Like, they struggled with Cincinnati, lost Arkansas, and now you face Indiana, who also needs a win. How important is this for Louisville, or to kind of maintain the level of where we thought they were before this week started?
Yeah, these are two teams that are very dependent on the 3-point line. And so I hate to give this cop-out answer, but it's just are you hitting shots? I would say both. On paper, Louisville's roster is more talented. Indiana's kind of done more with less throughout the season. And I would argue that Indiana's loss to Minnesota was far more damning than Louisville's to Arkansas, even though both of them were road teams in that one. With Indiana, the problem is the depth. Right now, they're not fully healthy. The rotation, outside of their top 6-7 guys is really light. Trent Sisley has been, on and off, especially in bigger games so far this season where he struggled a little bit. And they don't really have guys, throw someone in glass, break the glass in case of emergency guys. And Louisville, it feels like they have a ton of those. Obviously, Ali Khalifa was pretty unplayable against Arkansas's athleticism, but Indiana doesn't have much. So it could be a big Ali Khalifa game. Kajon Pryor still working back from injury. They have options. Indiana is more of a, if your top 7 aren't playing well, too bad, you're going to lose.
I think it's going to be a fun game, an up and down game. Both teams are among the nation's leaders in assist rate or the amount of field goals that are assisted on. Among the nation's leaders in 3-point rate, meaning the number of threes they take in comparison to the overall number of shots that they take. It's going to be a lot of good ball movement. It's going to be a lot of 3-point shooting. To me, it comes down to then all right, what else can you do? I think Louisville's got the better guards. I think Louisville's got the better front court in this game, right? Where obviously Louisville needs to shoot better than they did against Arkansas. And I just talked about how they need to prove they can do more than just shoot to win games. But shooting aside, I think their talent level is so much higher than Indiana, particularly in the backcourt, that I would expect them to have a major advantage there, even if they don't shoot the ball that well.
Yeah, no, it's. I think this is going to be one of the more. We'll find out something about teams in this particular one. I want to learn a lot about both.
Yeah, it is probably the game we will learn the most about. Whoever wins, maybe whoever loses too. Mm-hmm. Might be the case in Illinois, Tennessee as well, because both of these teams are good. We think because they've played a lot of really good teams close. Now Tennessee's got the win over Houston. That certainly rings home. Not the first big matchup that both these teams have been in, but they have lost more of these than they have won. Who's going to win this one? Like what makes the difference in your mind? Because both of them have really good front courts. Both of them have good guards that they rely on. Not exact carbon copies of each other, but similar ways to win between Tennessee and Illinois.
We're talking about Ken Palm Player of the Year. You know who's 6th?
I do not. Is it Jacoby Gillespie?
It's Nate Ament.
Oh, okay. I would not have guessed that.
No, I wouldn't have guessed that either. He's doing a lot of things other than scoring. The scoring efficiency has been really bad. He kind of has that problem where he's not shooting the 3 well or getting to the rim. It's a lot of in between. And that's obviously, it's been a problem for Tennessee for years now, is their offense is very predicated on mid-range pull-ups. And we have Dalton Connect or Chaz Lanier taking those shots, fine. But when it's Nate Ament who has not been able to hit them efficiently, then now your offense is kind of in a little bit of a problem. The thing with Kansas and the thing with Syracuse that was the deal in both of these games that they lost is those were 2 very formidable front courts defensively. And Tennessee became jump shot, who's not jump shot heavy, just kind of pounded it towards the hoop and kind of threw it at the rim and were unsuccessful at doing so. Illinois is not as, they're very long, they're very tall, but they're not as stout of a rim protection team. And Tennessee is going to need to get to the free throw line, get to the rim, and make Illinois' big men defend them at the hoop, because that's where Tennessee's strength lies, is their physicality at the rim and their offensive rebounding and scoring down low. Illinois sneaky has not, their games have been ugly. I mean, they've been winning them, but they're ugly games that they're playing in the mud, which you wouldn't really expect from this style of roster and the way that Illinois has played the last couple of years. But you wonder, if the 3-point shooting doesn't come around at some point, it's going to be a bit of a problem. And with Tennessee, who doesn't play drop coverage, who's going to switch nearly everything, it's going to require them to self-create a lot better than they've done over the last couple of weeks.
It's going to need a big game from Andrej Sirakovic for Illinois, I think. Kylan Boswell was the only one who did anything against UConn, and he has probably been the most consistent contributor for Illinois this season. Not always the best contributor, but the most consistent contributor for the Illini when they have looked their best, when they had the Texas Tech win, when they played Alabama really close. Sirakovic emerged as a 1A, 1B with Boswell and had maybe gone above Boswell in the pecking order. Like, I think a big game from him is almost required now for Illinois to beat a team of this caliber and other good teams in the country. You need a 2-3 really good scoring options. And Stojakovic has shown, and from a talent perspective, is, I think, the best guy in Illinois to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's got to hit some threes in this game. He's been very downhill heavy. Granted, a lot of that's been the defense that's been played on him. You cannot get downhill on Tennessee, so you're going to have to hit them from up top.
The nightcap on Saturday is where we'll close. Auburn and Arizona. Dub this a 1st-to-90 game as well.
Mm-hmm. Good. I'm looking forward to Arizona in this one because their last 2 big games, UCLA and UConn, were both 2 teams that were doing everything in their right mind to slow it down. And Auburn's not going to do that. So we get to watch up-tempo, fast-paced Arizona again. It's been a long time since we've seen them do that against a good team, and that sounds like a problem for Auburn. You don't really want Arizona to be playing in a 75-80 possession game. Auburn did survive NC State, and they won by 10, but it took Kevin Overton and Keyshawn Hall being unconscious like all game long for them to just hold off a struggling NC State team in a game that was single digits down the stretch. Mm-hmm. So that does not bode well for now flipping around, traveling cross country, going to Arizona, not being a great transition denial team, and playing a team that's just been dying to get out and run against a good opponent. This feels like Arizona makes a statement.
I think so with Arizona. I know they probably want to, because since they've picked up their last big win, Purdue's gotten a massive win. Michigan went off the players there run. Even UConn got healthy and looked dominant against Illinois. Arizona hasn't had, they're the team in that tier of 4 that hasn't had the chance recently to really put their stamp on something, put their name on something. I think they could want to do that here. But I've also been much more impressed with Auburn than I expected to be. Both you and I were very skeptical of what they could be this season, probably leaned more towards their downside than their upside. Look at the big games they've played this season, though. They have the win over NC State this week. They close players there with a win over St. John's. Other than the Michigan loss, which everybody got beat like a drum by Michigan in that, the only other big game they played is Houston, where they had the ball at the end with a chance to win. Like, they have played a lot of these tough teams really, really close. Now, Arizona is a bit of a different animal, given the way Houston's been a little up and down to start the season, and St. John's and NC State have their own flaws. But this is a chance, too, for Auburn to make a statement and show that they are legit and they're not taking a step back from where they were under Bruce Pearl. Stephen Pearl's had them playing at a really high level. I don't know if they are good enough to beat Arizona because of where Arizona could be, but this could be another game, even in a loss, where Auburn solidifies itself as, yes, we are still one of the better teams in the SEC. We're still a top 15 team in the country.
And shout out to Keyshawn Hall. He's been playing out of his mind this season. I think that if you told me that Keyshawn Hall was a top 10 player in the country, I'd be a little higher on Auburn, which he has largely been this year.
Yeah, well, we'll see if he's able to maintain that, certainly. Well, let's get into our picks. I made one up back from you from our earlier episode this week. You are still one up on the season. We have 6 opportunities for me to fix that wrong. Go back to the top, Gonzaga or Kentucky?
Gonzaga.
I'm going to take Kentucky.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I think Kentucky is too good not to figure it out, and I think Gonzaga has overachieved a little bit to this point in the season. Back against the wall, I'm going to take Kentucky. Iowa State or Purdue?
Iowa State.
If you're going to give me Purdue and Mackey, I'm going to take Purdue and Mackey. I think Iowa State puts forth a good test, but if you give me Purdue and Mackey against a good team, I'm going to take Purdue in that scenario. This is good. We're 2 for 2 with differences. This is good. This is very good. Duke or Michigan State?
Duke.
Michigan State.
Oh, okay.
Again,
3 for 3.
I think home court matters here. And I think Michigan State can do the things that Duke has done to make up for some of Duke's deficiencies better than Duke, a.k.a. rebounding and half-court defense. So I'm going to go Michigan State at home. Louisville or Indiana?
Let's go Louisville.
I'm going to go Louisville as well. We'll be on the same page that one. Illinois or Tennessee?
Let's go Tennessee.
I'm going to go Tennessee as well. I have more faith in Rick Barnes stabilizing things than I do in Brett Underwood stabilizing things. Quite
Fair
frankly.
enough. And then to close things out, I'm going to take Arizona in possibly a rout.
I'm going to take Arizona as well. That one should be a lot of fun. But yeah, all right. So we got enough differences here to make the weekend interesting.
Yeah.
See what's going to happen.
I don't feel like I'm just throwing one in the ocean with Florida just to get some differentiation.
No. But when you have this many big games between this many good teams, there's going to be a little bit of a split here. So we'll see what happens. Really fun weekend. Make sure you reserve some time on the couch, some self-care time. Make sure we watch these games, and we'll see what happens. For Matthew Winick, I'm Brian Rauf. We'll be back on Monday to break all of these down. We'll talk to you then.